Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6. Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. Text number 27. Janmatad etad amalam duravapam maha. Narayano Nara Sukha Kila Naradaya Ekantinam Bhagavatas Tar Akila Akinchananam Padaravinda Raja Sa Pluta Dehinam Syat Yanam Tad Etad Amalam Dura Pam Aha Narayano Nara Saka Kila Naradaya Ekantina Bhagavatas Tara Kinchananam Padaravinda Radhasa Puta Dehinam Syat Yanam Deitad Amala Durapam Vidaravinda Radhasa Pluta Dehinam Syat. Tommy. Yanam Tatad Amalam Durapamam Aha Narayano Narasakal Ekantinam Bhagavatas Tarakinchananam Padaravinda Radhasa Pluta Dehinam Syat Nam Tade Taramalam Durvapamaha Narayano Narasaka Kila Naradaya Ekantinam Bhagavatas Tadakinchananam Padaravinda Radhasa Pluta Dehinam Syat Yanam knowledge tat that etat this amalam without material contamination Duravapam having a hard time with that one. Duravapam. Very difficult to understand. Without the mercy of a devotee. Aha. Explain. Narayanaha. Lord Narayana. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narasaka, the friend of all living entities, especially human beings. Kila, certainly. Naradaya, under the great sage Narada. Ekantinam, of those who have surrendered exclusively to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tat, that, knowledge. akinchananam, do not claim any material possessions. Pada aravinda, of the lotus feet of the Lord. Rajasa, by the dust. Apluta, bathe. Dehinam, whose bodies. Syat, is possible. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, formally explained this transcendental knowledge to the great saint Narada. Such knowledge is extremely difficult to understand without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada. But everyone who has taken shelter of Narada's disciple succession can understand this confidential knowledge. Purport. It is stated here that this confidential knowledge is extremely difficult to understand. Yet it is very easy to understand if one takes shelter of a pure devotee. This confidential knowledge is also mentioned at the end of Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. This knowledge is an extremely confidential secret, but it can be understood if one approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the bona fide agent, the spiritual master, in the disciple succession from Narada. Prahlad Maharaj wanted to impress upon the sons of the demons that although such knowledge can be understood only by a saintly person like Narada, they should not be disappointed. For one takes shelter of Narada instead of material teachers, this knowledge is possible to understand. Understanding does not depend upon high parentage. The living entity is certainly pure on the spiritual platform, and therefore anyone who attains the spiritual platform by the grace of the spiritual master can also attain this confidential knowledge. I'll just read the last few verses in the chapter without any purports. Prahlad Maharaj continued, I received this knowledge from the great saint Narada Muni, who was always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is called Bhagavad Dharma, is fully scientific. It is based on logic and philosophy and is free from all material contamination. The sons of the demons replied, Dear Prahlad, neither you nor we know any teacher or spiritual master other than Shanda and Amarka, the sons of Sukracharya. After all, we are children, and they are our controllers. For you especially, who always remain within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with a great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it was possible for you to hear Narada? Kindly dispel our doubts in this regard. That's on the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prahlad Instructs His Demoniac Schoolmates. Namo Vishnu Vraya Krishna Prestaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Ramane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadhyade Satarane. Basic principle, if you want to learn something, you have to learn from someone who knows. If you're trying to fly an airplane and you have your baby sister teaching you, who only saw how to fly an airplane in her video game that she plays, then you and everyone else might get into a little difficulty trying to fly an airplane. But if you learn from a professional pilot, systematically, according to the methodology, then there's possibility you can advance from one level of understanding to the next. For instance, if you want to have a heart operation, generally you go to the experienced specialist who has a history of successfully performing heart operations. But if someone reads a book on how to perform a heart operation and then puts up a sign, heart operations half price, be the first on your block. then I don't know how many customers he'll get at half price. Maybe there's a few who take it up. But in any case, it might not be a successful heart operation. Similarly, if we want to learn the science of Krishna consciousness, we have to learn it from someone who knows the science. And they can teach us only as much as they know. Of course, they can give us the information coming from the higher authorities beyond what they know, but they also have to try to learn it themselves. For instance, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Acharyamam vijaniyam nava martita karichet nasara buddha sudyeta sarvadeva maya guru. This is from the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna speaking to Uddhava about the duties of a disciple living in the ashram of the Guru, Brahmachari Guru Kule Vasandanta Guru Hitam. So here, that's also from the 7th canto. So Krishna tells Uddhava, Acharya imam vijaniyam nava mindita karija, that one should never disrespect the Guru. So that's the principle. Why is that principle? And Vishrava said that once in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text 34, that one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advance in the spiritual life. So this is not only applicable, of course, to those who give us diksha, it's applicable to learning anything from anyone. If you want to learn something from someone, you have to have a service attitude. Service attitude means they tell you something and you're willing to follow it. If you want to learn math and you go to school and they tell you 1 + 1 is equal to 2 and you refuse to accept it and say, I think it's 3, and I'm going to, whatever mathematical calculations I'm going to make from now on, I'm going to come up with 3 because I'm not going to follow you and surrender. I'm not a servant. I'm the master. I make my own math as I go along. Then you'll never learn math. There's no sense of approaching such a teacher to learn math because you have your own math. You already think you know what math is, so why bother someone, waste their time and waste your time? So satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. So satisfaction of anyone that you're trying to learn from is the secret of advancing in that particular subject matter. That one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Because if we think we know everything, or we think we know anything, or we know a particular subject matter, and we approach someone to learn the subject matter and we already think we know it, then how can we learn from them? Because we won't listen to them. And if we think we're better than them for some reason, then we won't listen to them either. And even if we think, well, all right, you may know something, but I'm not really going to follow it, then we're just wasting our time. So the proper attitude, one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. That's the first thing. The attitude. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. So one has to have a service attitude. Not only we should follow the directions, but we should also do it with a proper service attitude. And then I believe Prabhupada says, blind following and absurd inquiries condemned. Yes. Blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. One should only hear submissively, but one should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiry. Prabhupada once said that we should learn this Bhagavad Gita thoroughly, just like a lawyer knows his law books. Unless we learn this Bhagavad Gita, then where's our vision? How can we understand how to see things properly? And if it seems too complicated, and so many philosophies, so many words of being, how does it all fit together? Well, that's why we have to study even more. so it becomes clear. Prabhupada says here, blind following. So, spiritual master tells us something and we just blindly follow without any understanding. Just like a monkey could do the same thing. You have these monkeys and they have their, I don't know if they have it here, but I'm sure you've heard of it. They go out with a can and they go for donations. The organ grinders, and then he goes out with the monkey, goes out. Because people like monkeys. They like animals. They want to have a successful advertising campaign, include animals, children, and women. Those are the three things, especially animals and children. People like, everyone likes them. So the monkey goes out with his can, but he's not really going out with very much understanding what he's doing. If he doesn't go out with a can, he doesn't get a banana. He's not doing it out of love for the organ grinder, nor is he in a submissive attitude. Oh, please give me something. He's told what to do and he just does it. So that's called blind following. And absurd inquiries condemn. Where did the spirit soul come from? You know, how many spirit souls can it fit on the head of a pin? What is Balaram's relationship with Radharani? So many inquiries have nothing to do with our practical devotional service, won't really help us advance in spiritual life, don't require us to focus our mind on Krishna and do service, but so many inquiries to waste our time. So blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So with our mind, sentiment, called fanaticism. In other words, devotional service or advancement in any science or any practical activity requires two things, namely use of intelligence and use of the mind. By use of the intelligence, we learn what to do, and by the use of the mind, we learn the mood in which to do it in. Now, if we only learn what to do, we only develop our intelligence, then we become dry speculators. We become dry philosophers. And if we only learn how to feel in what we're doing, then we become sentimentalists or fanatics. So Bhaktivedanta means we use our intelligence to develop our proper sentiments. It takes transcendental intelligence to develop transcendental emotions, transcendental feelings. So therefore, if we only develop our feelings, then we'll just be blind. And if we only develop our intellect, then we'll be dry speculators, absurd inquirers. The subject matter is how to develop relationships with Krishna and his devotees. That's the subject matter of devotional service. And if we have some other subject matter, then we're not talking about devotional service. We're talking about some other subject matter. Maybe it could be related, and perhaps it is related. But if it's not related, then it's a waste of time. On the other hand, if we only have feeling and we don't learn how to properly develop our feelings and how to apply them appropriately to the different time, place, and audience, then we just become fanatics. We think there's one way is the only way. One feeling is the only feeling. Whatever I feel, that's the truth. We don't care about what other people feel. We only care about what we feel. And if people don't accept our feelings, then who cares about them? I have to find someone who accepts my feelings. So that's not exactly the best service attitude. If you want to gain friends and influence people, then you find out what they need and you satisfy their need, not your needs. You find out what will make them satisfied, not what will make you satisfied. Otherwise, we're just on the material platform. That's the material platform. So the spiritual master, like Narada Muni, he taught Prahlad Maharaj the science of Bhakti Yoga because Narada Muni is a selfless servant of Krishna. He understands how to put Krishna in the heart and serve him selflessly with pure devotion. And he taught that Prahlad Maharaj. So we have to learn those two things, how to avoid blind following, how to avoid absurd inquiries, Not that it's probably right. It's not that we shouldn't hear submissively, but we should hear to get a clear understanding through service, submission, and inquiry. That is a combination of service, surrender, and humility, or surrender, and inquisitiveness that constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Submission, service, and inquiry. And then Prabhupada writes, if there's submission and service, then inquiries from the bona fide spiritual master will actually be effective. Inquiries and inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the bona fide spiritual master will not be effective. So we have to develop this inquisitiveness, this hunger to understand Krishna consciousness. If we have no hunger to understand Krishna consciousness, then it all becomes dull. We have some other thing, if we have some another objective, then of course this philosophy will seem very dull. I just want immediate satisfaction. Make me happy right now, or else I'm just going to turn off. If you don't make me happy right now, the heck with your philosophy. Who cares about your philosophy? My philosophy is make me happy. Entertain me. Then I'll appreciate what you're saying. Rather than being actually inquisitive, what can I hear that will improve my life, improve my understanding, improve my consciousness, so that I can make actually genuine spiritual advancement. So unless we're hungry for spiritual advancement, unless we're inquisitive how to make advancement, then it all seems very mundane, what we're doing. So submission and service, inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. So we have to be inquisitive, and at the same time we have to be willing to listen to someone who knows more than we do. If we can't find anyone we think knows more than we do, then we're not going to learn anything. There's no sense of approaching anyone because we already know more than they do. We should be up there giving the lecture. Why are they wasting our time? We should enlighten them because we actually know. So inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination of the spiritual understanding, unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the bona fide spiritual master will not be effective. So unless there is submission and service, in other words, unless we're really anxious and interested in doing something, we're asking a question not just to make it appear that we know something, or to test the speaker, see if he can come up with an interesting answer. The idea is that we should be inquisitive to find out what we can do to make our spiritual advancement, to get everything clear, what we're supposed to do. So submission and service constitute the proper combination. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the bona fide spiritual master will not be effective. So we not only have to be submissive and inquire, but we also have to serve. We have to follow out the instructions, and then we might get some benefit. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time. Not wasting our time completely, just being here in the spiritual atmosphere, there's advantage and there's benefit, but not as much as we can get. We become a little bit more serious. One must be able to pass the test of the bona fide spiritual master, of the learned spiritual master. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master. And when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. The original spiritual master, of course, is in our heart, and he knows our desires, he knows our sincerity, and he can enlighten us. But also, if we're approaching anyone, they more or less can figure out what our real desires are, and they'll give us the information necessary to satisfy our actual desire. Someone has to pass the test of the learned spiritual master. Spiritual knowledge is not so simple. Not that I make inquiries, but I don't do any service. I keep on making inquiries, but I don't do anything. So then one will not get genuine spiritual understanding. One has to apply it. One time one man asked Prabhupada, what's the difference between Krishna consciousness and Buddhism? So Prabhupada asked him, he said, do you follow Buddhism? And the man said, no. And Prabhupada said, well, follow something. Just don't, do something. You don't know what Buddhism is. You don't know what Krishna consciousness is. What's the difference? If I tell you what the difference is, you want to understand either one of them. You don't know what Buddhism, you don't know what Krishna consciousness is. Why are you inquiring about what the difference is? Follow one of them. At least you'll find out what that is. And you can find out what the difference is. In this verse, while blind following absurdities and condemn. One must, a bona fide spiritual master is very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the disciple is submissive, it is always ready to render service, and the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. So knowledge should come from inquiries, but it requires submission and service. Otherwise, it won't happen. So if you don't remember that, what I just said, that's all right. Because the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is still there, text 43, 34. You can always go back and try to go over it again and again and again until you go to sleep at night and you dream about it. So are there any questions or comments? Okay, we have the microphone. Are we still on the internet? Do we ever get questions from the internet? We do get questions from the internet.
No, that's not.
We're not on the internet.
We are in the internet, yes. Yeah.
Do they ever submit questions?
They can, but usually they never. Maybe through Facebook, but they never.
Oh, they know. Maybe we can read. Is there some way they can do it?
They can text message to the vote or something.
Yeah, usually.
Oh, okay. So, question.
Yeah, my question is, since you're so conditioned that you get all the time so emotionally, and what is the role of your emotions towards the try to understand knowledge from a spiritual master? I mean, what's the proper emotions that you have? You should be all the time happy. You should be like in love to the spiritual master, or you should be. Is there any relationship between getting the knowledge from spiritual master and?
Yeah, we just went over that. You have to hear and try to remember and assimilate the knowledge. Try to see it in the proper perspective. How you should feel, how you should think, how you should speak, what you should do. So there's different appropriate times at different places, the time, place, and circumstance, how to serve Krishna appropriately. So that takes some knowledge. So we have to learn that. That's the science. How to become a good servant.
But sometimes if you are in the bad mood, it's harder to understand what spiritual master is telling to you. And
therefore we should get out of our bad mood and have the proper attitude. As it says here, that one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. So that's the proper mood. Like a menial servant without false prestige. Therefore, we find in the Bhagavatam that when Narada Muni comes, and Krishna acts just like his menial servant. When Vyasadeva meets Narada, he acts like Narada Muni's menial servant.
And what to do if you are in the bad mood?
Well, that you're in Maya. Get out of Maya. You don't have to be in Maya. You don't get paid extra for being in Maya. There's no advantage in being in Maya. Just change your consciousness.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.